Welcome to managing stress and conflict as an engineer. Today I'm going to show you how you can go from feeling stressed out and afraid of conflict to being confident and skillful when you're dealing with conflict as an engineer. I'm going to show you how you can go from feeling small to standing out in your office, from backing down when there's a conflict to skillful persuasion. I'm going to show you can go from feeling burned out to relaxed and confident. Today we're going to talk about the 5 mistakes that hold engineers back in their careers, building self-confidence, managing stress, resolving conflicts. I'm going to tell you about my system to help you develop all of these different skills, and you're going to have an option to have a 10-minute call at the end of this presentation and see how it would work for you. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is John Murphy. I've been coaching for over 7 years. I've coached hundreds of people, and I've helped many engineers develop the skills that they need to deal with stress and conflict. I'm a social and emotional intelligence certified coach. I'm a professional certified coach with the International Coach Federation. I'm a certified professional coactive coach at the Coaches Training Institute, which is the oldest and largest coach training program in the world. My background is in structural engineering. I was a structural engineer for 6 years, and I'm a licensed professional engineer in civil engineering. I started out in my engineering job working as a structural engineer, but I was shy, I was quiet, I was afraid to speak up, and my desk was in between these 2 people that just hated each other. They would whisper to me how much they hated the other person when the other one wasn't looking, but they never talked with each other. I felt stressed out all the time. I felt like I was in the middle of a war zone, and I just didn't know how to handle it. I was afraid to speak up or change anything. I wanted to show leadership and make a difference in the office, but I just didn't know how. And one day I got fed up with waiting for things to change, and I decided to make a change. I signed up for my first leadership training. I was really nervous and I didn't know what to expect. These things can sometimes be a little goofy. But one of the first things that I learned that was really valuable was how we sometimes put ourselves into boxes and we limit our own potential. I learned I'd put myself in a box with my title as an engineer. I believed all the stereotypes about engineers being quiet, shy, unable to take on a leadership role, just do calculations, stay in the background. I believed all these things about myself. But what I found out is when you're looking really carefully, you can usually find evidence that contradicts some of your long-held beliefs about yourself or other people. You can also find evidence to support a completely new judgment about yourself or other people. And one piece of evidence that I noticed right away was one of the most outspoken and charismatic people in the leadership seminar was an engineer. Realizing this was really empowering, and it started to help me question some of my assumptions about engineers in general and my judgments about myself. And once I broke out of this box that I'd been putting myself in, I was able to take new actions I'd never taken before. One of the things I did was I stood up one day in my office and I said to both people sitting next to me, "I'd like to request a meeting." It took a huge amount of courage for me to speak those words. I called the meeting and I asked them why they weren't talking to one another. They started to talk and express their opinions. It's the first time they talked to each other in months. And it didn't work out perfectly, but I had taken some bold action for maybe the first time in my life. And I was no longer restrained by the judgments that I'd made about myself. And from that time forward, I've dedicated myself to improving the work environment for engineers and helping them overcome their own personal obstacles. And as I've been doing this work for the past 7 years, as I've been developing these skills, one of the main things that I run into is that the engineers are really great at solving technical problems. But when you're working with people, there's actually a whole different approach and a different perspective that you want to take. To show one of the main differences between engineering problems and working with people, I want to show you this video. And as you're watching this video, it's a video of animals looking in the mirror, looking at their own reflection. I want you to ask yourself, why are the animals acting this way? And what would need to happen for the animals to act differently? In other words, what would they need to do, or what perspective would they need to take in order to look at this differently and to gain some different insight that the animals are missing? So go ahead and ask yourself these 2 questions as you watch this video. One of the reasons that they're acting this way is that they don't recognize themselves in the mirror. And what they would need to do to actually recognize themselves in the mirror is they would need to step outside of themselves. So let's say the animal is in chair number 1 and the reflection is in chair number 2. They would actually need to take an outside perspective. They would need to get into this third chair and to look at themselves from the outside. That's part of what's missing, and that's what the essence of self-awareness is. You've probably heard of that term before, and it probably sounds kind of vague and not really important, but this is the essence of self-awareness. And you can see the consequences of self-awareness. They're running into a mirror. They're hurting themselves. They're not responding to the reality of the situation because they lack self-awareness. They lack this ability to step outside of their own perspective and to look at themselves from the outside. And this is something that is uniquely human. Most animals do not have this. Maybe dolphins do because they have a little bit more evolved brain than humans, but humans are one of the only species that can actually do this. So it's actually a wonderful gift that we can actually stand outside of ourselves and reflect on ourselves. And it's one of the major reasons for our success as a species is we are able to recognize ourselves and look at circumstances from the outside rather than being just stuck in our own perspective and reacting to things without any conscious thought and reacting to things with a sense of wisdom and looking at things from the bigger picture. Most animals just react to circumstances based on instinct and based on survival. But when you react to things based on instinct and survival, you may be missing the actual reality of the situation. And you may be saying to yourself, well, yeah, that's animals. Animals are stupid. They're not as smart as humans. But the reality is that we have a lot in common with these chimpanzees and these other animals. We have a lot in common with them in the way our brain works. We have a lot of common parts in our brain. Although we have this higher level of thinking, we don't always use it. Sometimes we do react, and sometimes we do respond out of instinct and survival. And it's in those moments that we're sometimes missing the bigger picture. I'll give you an example. And one way that it's pretty similar to looking in the mirror is one of the ways that I react and respond out of instinct and survival is when somebody tells me what to do or tries to boss me around in a really aggressive way. Whenever somebody tells me what to do, say, hey John, go do this. And they do that, they say that to me, I respond in my head. I don't always say it out loud, but I'm like, don't tell me what to do. That's how I respond. That's my reaction. That's my survival response. But if you notice, what are the similarities there between me and this person? This person wants control. This person wants to control me and tell me what to do. And what are the qualities in myself when I'm responding or reacting that way? Is I want control. I want to control myself, and I don't want him to control me. So you can see that these are actually two sides of the same coin. He wants control, I want control, and we're just running into each other's heads. And in order to resolve that situation, in order to actually respond in a thoughtful and productive and effective way, I need to sidestep my own reaction, and I need to step outside of myself, look at my reaction, and analyze what is the best way to respond. I may have to give a more thoughtful answer than just yelling at him and telling him, don't tell me what to do, because that's just going to probably go down into a downward spiral. But if I look outside of myself, I might come up with a better response. This is the yin-yang symbol. So I wanted to also bring this in here too, because we may not notice it, but sometimes the things that we hate or the reactions that we have are actually parts of ourselves that we don't acknowledge or accept. So in my example, I don't like people that are overly bossy, but there's actually a part of myself that's really bossy, and that's part of what is going on there, is that person is bringing out a quality in myself that I don't like. So you can see that in the yin-yang symbol, the white has a little bit of dark, and the dark has a little bit of white. They both have a little bit of their opposite. They both have a little bit of the qualities of the other. And that is often what happens when we're reacting out of hate and anger, is we're reacting to the part of ourselves that we don't accept. And this is a common problem in humanity and a common problem in conflicts, is we actually have more in common than we realize. It's just that there are certain parts of ourselves that we don't accept. But it's often good to step outside of ourselves, look at ourselves from the outside, and ask ourselves, how am I contributing to the problem? How am I contributing to the situation or the conflict? And looking for a more effective way of dealing with it. So that's one major difference. There are many differences between humans and animals, and also there are many differences between working on engineering problems and working on problems with people. As you can see, perspective taking, looking outside of yourself, oftentimes these things don't show up in engineering problems. But these are unique skills that you can develop, and they're skills that you need to develop if you want to work with people more effectively. And I'm going to give you 5 common mistakes that I see engineers making when they're trying to work with people, and they're trying to approach it from an engineering perspective, but sometimes they need to take a different perspective in order to deal with people more effectively. So again, the first mistake is they're just reacting to their circumstances. They're reacting to a person as if they're a problem. But if you react to a person as a problem, you're not going to get the result you want, because the ultimate goal of working with people is cooperation and collaboration. If you treat somebody as if they're wrong and that there's something wrong with them and they have a problem, they're going to react and respond much similar, pretty similar to how a monkey reacts when he sees his own reflection. They're going to attack you. If you tell them what they're doing wrong, they might attack you. So one thing that you need to do, one mistake again, is that they're reacting to their circumstances rather than stepping outside themselves and responding in an effective way. The second mistake is that they're trying to use logic to solve emotional problems. Most problems that occur with people are actually emotional. Like that person in my story that was causing all of these problems and creating all this conflict, he actually had an emotional thing going on where he had lacked trust in the people in his office. He lacked trust in his fellow engineers. If I tried to deal with that in a logical way, I wouldn't get anywhere, because I would start explaining to him why the other person's work isn't as bad as he thought it was. I would start to explain the logical reasons why that person's work was valid and that he shouldn't judge the work as bad as he was. But the reality is, underneath that was a lack of trust. So the real problem was an emotional problem, not a logical problem. The third mistake is they're trying to be right at any cost. And this is pretty similar to the story that I was telling you about how I sometimes react when people are bossing me around. I want to fight them, and I don't care how much it costs, I don't care what the consequences are, I just want to be right and tell them I'm not going to listen to you. But that actually doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't actually produce the results that I want, and it doesn't improve the situation. So being right isn't always worth the cost of the relationship. The fourth mistake that I see is they don't believe they can change. And I was dealing with this, as I said before, before I took the leadership seminar, I believed all these stereotypes about myself. I believed stereotypes about engineers, that they were just sat in a cubicle and did calculations. But the reality is that we're human. We're biological. We can change, we can evolve, we can learn, and we can grow. And all of these boxes that we put ourselves into are just actually judgments, and those judgments can be changed. The fifth mistake that I see is they focus on faults. As engineers, we're always looking for what's wrong. We're always looking for what the problem is and what the solution is. But if you're focusing on the faults of a person, again, they're going to react to you in a negative way. And if you're focusing on your own faults, it's actually going to bring you down. It's going to decrease your effectiveness because you're overly focused on the negative aspects of yourself. So the opposite of that would be to focus on your positives. Focus on the positive qualities of another person and to focus on the positive qualities of yourself, and that will help you grow more effectively, because it's like watering a plant. If you give it that water, it will give it space to grow, it will give it the nutrients it needs to expand on its strengths, rather than just stepping on the plant and keeping it crushed down. So those are the 5 common mistakes. And I've got a system to help you deal with all these mistakes, and a system to help you get out of those boxes, to take on different perspectives, to help you deal with these problems that show up when you're working with people, to help you develop the skills you need to work with people effectively in stressful situations, to handle your own stress, and to resolve conflicts. There are 3 parts to my system. I use the metaphor of a building. As I said, my background's in structural engineering, so I like these architectural drawings to show you a little bit, use them as a metaphor for how to build yourself up and how to create a connected framework with all the people on your team. So the foundation represents your internal strength, your foundation of internal strength, so that you can face problems effectively and not waver. The reinforcement is about helping you handle stress and helping you become more resilient. Finally, the connected framework is about building connections, building trust with people so that you can support each other and to reach higher heights because you're connected together, and that you will support each other when there is stress or there's problems that occur. When you have that connected framework, all the people on your team, you'll be much more effective at being a leader and getting a successful result in your projects. The first step is the foundation. This is about standing your ground when people disagree with you, understanding your values, and having a clear outcome of what you want to produce. So this is a foundation of internal strength so that you won't waver when there's stress, you won't waver when people disagree with you, you won't waver when you're doubting yourself. You'll focus on your strengths instead. So the actions for this are to clear your self-critical thoughts, identify your strengths, build a vision of where you want to go and who you want to be, develop a strategy to get there, and take action with accountability. This is the foundation of leadership. This is the foundation that's going to help you build on and help you develop the skills that are required in further steps. Without this foundation, you may waver, you may try and show leadership, but because you'll have that self-doubt, you won't be as effective. So this is the internal part of this system. As you can see from the picture, most of this is underground. Most of this is actually not going to be visible, and just as the foundation is underground. So most of this won't actually be seen from a visible standpoint, but this is about doing that internal work so that you know yourself, you know where you're going, and you can believe in yourself enough to show leadership. In the same way that I had to stand up and call that meeting, I had to have a sense of myself. I had to have a sense of internal strength before I could stand up. I had to believe in myself before I could stand up. Once you get in the meeting, there's a whole different set of skills that you want to use, but you need to first believe in yourself so that you have the courage to stand up and call that meeting, ask for a raise, deal with a conflict, or handle a big project, take on a leadership position. So that's what this foundation is about. The second step is reinforcement. The reason you want to do this is to reduce your stress, improve your visual spatial processing, working memory, executive functioning, and reduce the amount that your brain becomes distracted. The main tool that I use for this is mindfulness practices, developing self-compassion, and restoring your energy with rest and play. So again, this is about building a resilience, building the ability to handle stress, building the ability to go for the long haul. So you may get really excited if you get, like I got really excited when I broke through that initial self-doubt and I stood up and asked for a meeting, but the reality is that one instance of courage is only one instance. And you need to do this years over a time to actually build up that connected framework. You need to have resilience to go through the struggles, to go through failures, and to keep going. So this is about reinforcing yourself so that you can handle this leadership in the long haul, so that it's not just a one-off thing and then you go back to being your old self. You need to reinforce yourself and to keep building and be able to handle all the failures that may come along the way, and then get back up and try again. Because that's what's going to really produce change. It's not going to be in an instant. It's going to be years of development, years of pushing yourself, years of growth, before you really reach the top of your game, your full potential, and the person that you're meant to be. I wanted to show these studies on mindfulness. So there's 3 different studies on mindfulness, and I do this because I want you to know that mindfulness may seem kind of, airy-fairy. It may, whatever your word for that is, it may seem like wishy-washy, hippie stuff. But mindfulness has becoming more and more of a scientifically verified practice that shows it actually makes a real difference in people's lives. And I've seen this for myself. I've seen such a difference in my life, in my ability to handle stress and face conflicts as I've developed these mindfulness skills. Here's 3 studies. There's one that shows from the Massachusetts General Hospital that showed a reduced anxiety. In the Consciousness and Cognition Journal, it showed that it significantly improved visual spatial processing, working memory, executive functioning, and a Harvard study helped show that it reduced the amount that the brain becomes distracted. So, as you can see from these results, it's going to actually improve your level of skill and ability as an engineer. It's going to improve your working memory, it's going to improve your ability to solve problems because you won't be as distracted. These mindfulness practices, in addition to reducing stress, will also help you become a better engineer. And if you wanted to look up these studies and really do the research for yourself and see how these studies have shown these results, I've got these references right here. You can pause the video and look these up if you want to. As you can see, there's many. These are pretty complicated references. A lot of these studies had a lot of contributors. For the second one, there was a lot more authors than that, but I just wrote down one author because I figured you could find it with that. So a lot of people contributed to these studies, so the references are a little bit complicated. But if you want to look these up, you can just do some Google searches and look for these studies right here, and they'll show you the results of these scientific studies. So again, the reinforcement is about reducing stress, improving that visual spatial processing, reducing the amount that your brain becomes distracted. And to do this, you want to use mindfulness practices, develop self-compassion, and restore your energy with rest and play. The final and third step is that connected framework. This is about resolving conflicts once you have connections with other people, building trust and respect, and also being recognized as a leader at your work. To do this, you want to study leadership principles, manage your ego so people don't think you're arrogant or self-centered, and you want to listen and understand others, communicate effectively, and use conflict resolution techniques. There's a lot here, but the main thing is that there's the connections with other people. And connections with other people don't happen in an instant, they happen over time. As you can see from the picture, there's a very complicated framework. There's a very complicated connections between all these different pieces in that building, in that picture. And those connections already exist probably in your organization in one way or another, and they're very complicated, they're very complex. So understanding other people's perspectives is going to help you understand the connections that other people have with each other, and as well as understand where the connections are broken. When there's a broken connection, it's going to weaken the strength of the entire building. So making sure that there's no broken connections in your framework, in your team, that everybody's connected and working together to help produce a better result. I wanted to talk about what this means, what these skills mean in terms of your income and what the impact on your income could potentially be. All these skills are part of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand your emotions, the emotions of other people, and to use that information to manage ourselves and to manage our relationships. As I said, working with people, it's often an emotional thing rather than a logical thing, and having proper skills to deal with those emotions of yourselves and others is what emotional intelligence is about. This is a study that was done by TalentSmart, and they showed a direct correlation between their income and their emotional intelligence score. And people with high emotional intelligence earn, on average, $29,000 more than people with low EQ. On average, for every point that they increased their EQ, there was a $1,300 increase in salary. So you can see even a small increase in the amount of your emotional intelligence could give you a return on investment of over $1,000. Now I wanted to lay out some of the details of the course that I offer to help you improve all of these skills, to help you build that foundation, to build resilience, and to build a connected framework. Before the course starts, you would get a 200-page workbook. And this workbook has skills to help you develop all 23 different competencies in emotional intelligence. I'm going to give you an emotional intelligence assessment, and we're going to talk one-on-one to debrief that assessment and to help you develop a plan to build your emotional intelligence, develop the skills that are specific to you, and give you tools to achieve that. The training consists of group calls every other week, and those are 90 minutes long, and there's 15 total. You'll have an option to add on one-to-one coaching with me every week. They would be staggered, so because they're both every other week, you would basically have either a training or a group or a coaching call every week. The coaching calls are 45 minutes long, and again, those are an optional add-on, but the main training consists of the group training that we'd have every other week. This is an example of the emotional intelligence assessment. As you can see on the bottom axis, there are 23 different competencies, and they're all emotional intelligence competencies that are relevant to your career, including conflict management, influencing skills, catalyzing change, building bonds, 23 different competencies, and it shows you where your strengths and your weaknesses are so you can get a real accurate assessment of what areas you want to work on and also know your strengths as you move forward. This is the workbook, the 200-page workbook that you would get when you register for the course. As you can see, there are many different skills, many different practical tools that you can use to develop different skills, including behavioral self-control, integrity, initiative and bias for action. Here's resilience, developing agility, building empathy, communication, powerful influencing skills, teamwork and collaboration. And as you can see, this is over a 200-page workbook with exercises to help you develop all of these 23 different competencies. Here's an example of what one of the sections, one is on communication. As you can see, there's a part on the qualities of people that have the competence, people that lack the competence, and then there's development tips. They'll often have some quotes from some famous people to help you get some insight, like Benjamin Franklin. Here's a quote from Benjamin Franklin. And I'll give you books and resources to build on this skill. And then after that introduction to the skill, there will be practical exercises, forms that you can fill out, assessments that you can fill out to help you assess your skill, and also tips and techniques to build it. As you can see, this communication one, the first tool that comes along with communication is this assessment on your listening skills, and it has all of these different skills and abilities and techniques to help you improve your active listening skills. And it ends with a score where you can score yourself on your listening skills. You can go back to the questions to see where your weaknesses are and then intentionally practice those things to improve your listening skills. And then you can take the assessment again over time to see how you're improving. So again, even before the course starts, you're going to get that 200-page workbook. You'll have an emotional intelligence assessment, and I'm going to talk with you one-on-one over the phone to help you understand the assessment, to help you understand your strengths and weaknesses, and help you create a plan to improve those skills. Then the group training is every other week. Those will be group conference calls where we'll talk together. It will be more of a group coaching call, so we'll be all talking and working together. Those are limited to 10 people. And then if you want to work with me one-on-one, there will be an option to do a one-on-one coaching call every other week. This is the course outline. It follows exactly the steps that I laid out for you in the system. So as you can see, every single action step that I laid out for the foundation is in these trainings. So first one's just an introduction. The second training's clearing self-critical thoughts. Third one's identifying strengths, building a vision, developing a strategy, and taking action. Those first 5 trainings are about building that foundation to help you be more confident in yourself and have the ability to stand up and to take bold action. And then, as you can see on the left side, there's the reinforcement. There will be 3 courses, 3 different trainings on building mindfulness practices, self-compassion, restoring energy with rest and play. And then finally, on the right side, the connected framework will study leadership principles, introduction to conflict management, managing your ego, listening and understanding others, communicating effectively, resolving conflicts, and we'll have a completion session. So it's 15 sessions total. It's over 7 months of training to help you develop these skills in conflict management and stress management. Here's a layout of all the different things that you'd get if you register for this course. Again, the first thing is that emotional intelligence assessment and the debrief. That's worth over $100. The 200-page workbook, worth over $200. There's so many tools and techniques. That thing is worth so much. It's probably worth even more than $200 because the amount of value that you're going to get out of that workbook. It's really valuable tools and exercises. The group trainings, 15 in total, are worth over $3,000. The one-to-one coaching, again, is optional. You don't have to do that. If you want to do that, the value of that would be worth over $6,000. So as you can see, for option 1 without the one-on-one coaching, the total value of that is $3,300. Option 2, including the one-on-one coaching, is worth over $9,300. But I'm not going to charge you that because I want to have this be accessible. I want it to be a great group of people and not just the people that can afford a $9,000 program. I want to work with many people. So that's why the investment that I'm asking for this is only $150 per month for 6 months for the group training, including the emotional intelligence assessment and the 200-page workbook. If you want to do the one-to-one coaching and you want to add that on, that would be only $300 per month for 6 months. Again, that includes the group training as well for only $300 per month. If you're interested in this and you want to find out more to see if this system could be a good fit for you, the first step would be to have just a 10-minute call where I'd ask you a few questions to see if you're a good fit for this system and to see if this system is right for you. If that's the case, the next thing we do is book a longer call. Again, this is just a free call, 45 minutes long, and this will help you get more clarity in this area to help you develop a strategy and see how the system could fit in with your life and see if it's a good fit for you. So that would be a longer 45-minute call. Then finally, at the end of that call, if this system is right for you, if it's a good fit, then you'd register for the program and you'd start the training not too long after that. And finally, you'll start to see results. You'll start to build your relationships. You'll start to feel more confident in yourself, be able to handle stress better, and be able to handle those conflicts persuasively and effectively. Thank you so much for listening to this webinar. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your commitment to improving yourself, your commitment to being a better engineer, and all of the contributions that you make, the hard work that you do as an engineer, and everything you contribute to the people in your lives. If you're ready to find out more about this system, go ahead and book your 10-minute call now.